Some of the things that I loved about the culture include the formalities. They're very polite and formal, and the language has what's called honorifics, where they place importance on people and things based on how they speak, and they show different levels of respect through their language. So it's a really interesting language and interesting culture. The food is very interesting. Of course, they have sushi, they have different types of sashimi and rice and fish. We were fed quite a bit by the members. In Japan, the main religion is Bukkyo, which is ancestor worship. And when we were in the MTC and we learned about the commitment pattern, one of the things we learned was to build on common beliefs. So we would use the religion that was the main religion of the land, which is the Bukkyo. That means ancestor worship, also known as Buddhism. And we would say, well, we also respect our elders. In fact, we like to do baptisms for the dead, and we would explain how we also very much respect our ancestors. And they would really like that, and we would build on common beliefs that way. And we would earn a relationship of trust with them that way. In Japan, they do like to wear their kimonos for very formal occasions. If you would like to buy a kimono, you could buy one, or even you can buy a simple version and even a very more elaborate version when you go there. They traditionally only wear them for a very formal occasion, but it's not something they wear on a daily basis.
Well, historically speaking, Japan's its own island, and so for the longest time they were sort of isolated from the world, and there are periods of time where only certain port towns in Japan would be open to foreign influence. Nagasaki, which is in the Fukuoka Mission, was one of those places, and so you see a little bit of a Dutch influence in the area, as well as some Catholic influence because Catholic missionaries were able to come in during that time. But because of that overarching isolationist type mindset that they don't have anymore, so to say, because borders are open with international travel and trade and all of that mainly following the world wars. I feel like there's a lot of pride in the country itself. Like, people are proud to be Japanese, and it's something that unites them together. And I think one of the most powerful examples of that is, in 2011 when there's that big tsunami in Japan with an earthquake, which knocked out a large portion of the Sendai region, and caused the nuclear power plant scares and troubles. And we saw the resolve of the Japanese people to come together, and you would see really uplifting images and stories of people helping each other rebuild, drawing together as a community to help each other, to help those who have lost homes and family members or whatever. And it was interesting of a contrast for me, because at the same time, I think it was at the same time that Hurricane Katrina sort of took place, or the earthquake in Haiti took place. They were all sort of around the same time period. And seeing the response, the differences in response and the way people responded, I feel like Japan, I don't know what it is really, but I felt like they had more heart. And I could be biased because I'm partially Japanese, but there wasn't looting, there wasn't taking advantage of situations, but it was really coming together and being respectful and building together, and sort of that national identity that they possess. And part of that identity is resiliency. They had to build themselves back up, after they lost in the war, and so and when they had this massive earthquake, 100 years ago in Tokyo, where all the homes burned down, and so they're a very resilient people, and that's part of their identity, and so they're very hardworking, and they know that they have to put in a lot of hard work in order to accomplish different things, and that's why I feel like they're so successful. And you see that in terms of the work hours. A lot of the in the professional world, they're working 60-hour weeks, if not longer. And I'm not saying I encourage that, but it goes to show kind of what's important, and that mixed in with the traditional Buddhist ideology of family, piety, and respect. Those are very strongly rooted within the tradition as well, and so tradition in itself is sort of a big part of the Japanese culture. They're very wanting to keep tradition. Whether that's the way they celebrate New Year's, and they always go to a shrine or a temple, and say the prayers for the new year, and do whatever the other rituals that are involved in that, or they have a day for respect for the age day. It's called Keiro no Hi in Japanese, but it literally translates to Old People Day. Because that's something that they really respect their elders. There's Kids Day because they value kids, and there's all these unique different holidays that kind of highlight those different values. There's Memorial Day, just like there is in the US. It's on a different day. There's a Constitution Day. Christmas doesn't really exist in the traditional sense of Christmas. Western holidays and things are growing in popularity there. So you see Halloween starting to kind of take off with the little kids in Japan. Christmas is a big commercial thing as it is here. They have Valentine's Day in Japan as well, but they actually split Valentine's Day into two. Valentine's Day is where girls buy guys chocolate, and then a month later there's something called White Day, where guys have to buy chocolate that's like twice the value of the chocolate that was purchased for them to all the people who gave them chocolate. So major marketing win for chocolate companies in Japan. But that's become a tradition of itself as well.
In Japan, you always take your shoes off when you go into their house. Like, you never wear shoes inside ever. And so that was, I don't know, I grew up wearing shoes in the house. It wasn't a big deal, but like in Japan, you always take your shoes off. In the Genkon, they have like a little area and you put your shoes there. And so you never go inside with your shoes on. The holidays are kind of funny. They have like a holiday every month, pretty much, where they get like a day off of school. And there's some of them are like the most random days ever. I remember like there was kids out and we're like, is today a holiday? And they're like, yeah, it's Ocean Day. And we're like, sweet, you get like school off for Ocean Day. That's fun. Like, so that was pretty cool. And then they celebrate like the emperor's birthday, things like that. They don't really celebrate Christmas though. Most of the people are Buddhist. And so, I mean, I don't know why, I guess why celebrate Christmas if you don't believe in Christ? They would put up lights and things like that, but the biggest holiday was Shogatsu, which is like the New Year's, and that was just like, it's just like a big deal, and like they're crazy and they love it. They love New Year's, and they have like special food and like little tradition things that they do, and I don't know, it's really fun. Just they have like all this like New Year's stuff everywhere though, and so that was kind of cool. I came home bowing at everyone. I would like meet people and like bow a little bit and like things like that. And so I came back and like when I saw my parents, like I hugged them or whatever, but like I would like bow at people and I would like meet them and shake their hand and bow a little bit, and everyone thought that was kind of weird. And just like little things. when you like go past someone, you say like sumimasen, and you kind of put your hand up and like kind of like bow and like do this thing. And it's like, it's super weird in America if you do that. I learned, because if you try to do that, people are like, what are you doing? And I would kind of like shuffle and do little weird things that like the Japanese people do. But they're just so cute. Like everything they do is just like, they'll duck and like make a special effort like to not get in your way. They'll go like way around so they don't have to go in front of you and like things like that. They're just, it's that like politeness again, where everything they do, they just don't want to like interfere with like you and what you're doing. It's like very always thinking of like others. And I think that's a big part of the culture. They're very, like society is like more important than the individual kind of. And so everything's very like structured. And I think that's like one of the reasons that sharing the gospel is a little bit difficult sometimes, was it's like, oh, like, hey, like we're teaching about Jesus Christ. And it's like, well, like we're Buddhist and we've always been Buddhist and everyone else is Buddhist. And so we're going to just kind of like stay Buddhist. And so sometimes that was hard, because being Christian is outside of like the cultural and social norm. And that's kind of not frowned upon, but I think that's a thing that's like harder for them to accept than say like Americans, where we're very, I don't know, used to kind of doing our own thing. And it's like being a like individual and be unique. And there it's like, how are you going to help society, and how is like the society as a whole going to be affected by like what you're doing? So I think that was like interesting to see. They love tradition too. That was, I think, another kind of barrier to like the work. Is I think it was kind of interesting to see firsthand like what I imagine is like traditions of like their fathers. Like we're talking about like I don't know, in the Book of Mormon it always talks about that, like the traditions of their fathers and things like that, and how they were just hanging on to these things even though it wasn't necessarily the truth. And I think that's kind of how it was in Japan, where it's just like they have this like firm hold on like we're Buddhist and like we've always been Buddhist, and we have these are our traditions and these are our beliefs and this is our culture. And so we're not going to stray from that, especially in the older generation. A lot of like the younger people are starting to be more open to more like Western things, which is like in some ways not a good thing, because some of like the Western influence isn't a good thing. But at the same time, it also like allows them to be a little more open to the gospel, which has been really like a blessing. Seeing the youth, there's really strong youth in a lot of the wards and branches in Japan right now.